Okay.
Hello, my name is Exosuit, and welcome to the recording for the debate of God's Not Dead, good or bad. I will be taking the negative that the film is bad, and my father will be taking that the film is good. Please introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Papa. I'm the father of Exosuit, and as Exosuit stated, I'm going to take the position that the movie God's Not Dead is a good movie. Now, before we begin, I think we need to predicate this debate on the definition or the meaning of what is a good, air quotes, movie.
Personally, I believe that the predication on whether or not it's a good film should in fact fall to the merits of the film itself and not necessarily was this a film made for God.
The merits of the film. So what does how was the film presented? Did it get across a good message? So for me, a good movie, I would say, does it hold my attention? Does am I able to follow the story? Am I able to understand the character? And does it either A, entertain me, B, educate me, or C, move me? And on the basis of my definition, I say it was a good movie.
I, however, argue that a film needs to be done well in both its story design, its production, etc., etc. The aspects of the film should come together to make something good. Yeah, that's wrong. But I hold that the film is not good, due in part that it suffers from a major problem of not understanding what story it wants to take. If you were to look at the trailers for God's Not Dead, you would simply assume that it's a film about a philosophy student who debates his professor on whether or not God is dead, when in fact the film is not just that, but rather has several different people who all have their own stories that are meant to tell essentially airing different stories, which cuts time, forces you to divert your attention from the main point, and as such, none of the stories, minus the debate, can stand on its own 2 feet, and therefore the film falls apart because of it.
I understand what you're saying. But the side stories, like you said, I mean, there are quite a few side stories, and sometimes that may seem to be a distraction, but the side stories actually support the main premise of the film. The main character being Josh Wheaton and Professor Jeffrey, right? Jeffrey is the previous Christian turned atheist because of the loss of his mother. Josh Wheaton, who's put in the very uncomfortable position of standing up for his faith, right? He stands for his faith. The foreign national girl has been hiding her faith from her father, and finally has to stand up for it. The girlfriend of Josh Wheaton, who is a Christian, and is not Josh Wheaton, but the girlfriend of Jeffrey, who is the professor, the philosophy professor, is put in the very uncomfortable position of defending her faith, right? Making a choice over whether or not to stand up for her faith or continue her relationship with the professor. There's also the reporter, who doesn't show any kind of Christian background, but there's this reporter who's a girlfriend of this upwardly mobile, handsome, powerful young man. She continually, her claim, her fame comes from bashing Christians, right? And that ties into the main storyline, right? All these different people are in different areas of different aspects of either faith or battling faith, but they all come to the same end, right? They all come to the realization that Jesus loves them and died for them, right?
Yeah,
So,
that
what do
does
you-
happen.
Mhm.
So with that, I think we should look at the individual side stories first in detail before we move on to the main story of the philosophy teacher battling with the student.
I guess we can, but like I said, the side stories really they're just they're supporting and holding up uh, the main story, and they're all kind of interconnected in different ways. So if you look at the girl reporter, um, her boyfriend is the brother of the girlfriend of the professor, the philosophy professor, right? Um, Martin is the Chinese student, the student from China. He's in Josh's class, right? So he's communicating with his father. Who else is in there? Reporter, that guy, and then the professor. That's pretty much. Oh, and then the foreign national girl, right? She played a role because from the beginning, several scenes throughout the movie, and then there at the end. In the beginning, she was there to witness Josh's initial confrontation with Josh, his girlfriend, over whether or not he should proceed with the challenge from his professor.
And then she did nothing.
Well, she was put in a position of standing up for her faith, right?
But her story never, in fact, supported the main story. And that's why I want to look at these side stories.
It does. I'd have to disagree with you because she had the choice. She could either denounce Christ and say whatever her father wanted for their God, right? Or that's what he said. He demanded from her. She said, "No, I can't do that. I'm standing up because I know Jesus loves me. I cannot turn my back on Jesus." So he kicked her out of the house.
Well, first he hit her, and then he kicked her out of the house.
Yeah. But she was put in a position of, just like Josh, stand up for your faith or risk everything. And she did, and she was kicked out, right? The preacher, that's the other character. He had his friend coming over from, we don't know, maybe Africa or someplace, who is, the American preacher feels like, he's not providing any value here. He's just going through the motion. He's got all these charity. He's got a church and, congregation, but, how is he really serving the Lord? They're doing choir and whatever, right? He's not really reaching people like his friend that's the missionary, right? Who he says is down in the trenches, right?
Correct.
He's really working for Christ every day. He's doing kingdom work all the time. Whereas
Correct.
he feels, what am I providing? Where throughout the movie, he's put in different situations and finally comes to in contact with the girlfriend of the professor, right? And he helps her see helps her see what she needs to see with the decision about her relationship with Jeffrey, the professor.
Right.
That she, he explains to her, you understand God is perfect and, he doesn't make mistakes. God made you. Jesus died for you specifically, you individually. And if there's nobody else in the world that needed to be saved, Jesus would still have did what he did for you, Richie. I mean, you, that young lady, right?
Yes.
Which is the reality. That's what Josh is standing up for, right? And that's what the foreign national girl stood up for, right?
But while their stories may support the message, they do not support the main story.
That is the main story.
No, they're supporting the message of the main story that God's not dead. But they are themselves not supporting the main story.
Oh, so they're not supporting characters.
No. And they're all... And that's why I want to focus on them individually in detail to show how detached they are from the main story.
Okay.
So, with that, you brought up the foreign girl first. So she's... her religion that she's supposed to be a part of is Islam. Her father's Islamic, her brother's Islamic, presumably the family members living in their home is Islamic. When we first see her, her father is making sure she has her cowl on correctly, her
Hajib or
Yeah, the Hajib. That's what it's called. The Hajib. She, as soon as her father leaves, she takes it off. She overhears the main character arguing with his girlfriend about his decision to stand up for God. She then puts it back on when her father approaches, and from then on, she doesn't have any. Even when she saw the main character, she never said anything, she never interacted with them. All she did was listen. She had no effect on the main character at all on her first and only interaction until the very end of the film when she meets the main character in the concert for the Christian group that's playing.
True.
And again, because she doesn't interact with him, she doesn't say anything, she doesn't even support him behind the scenes by having conversation with his girlfriend, having conversation with the professor, not doing anything. Her story is largely pointless to the main story because she doesn't contribute anything to it. It's her own story, her own journey, her own arc, which could work if it was a film about her. But it was another story tacked on to several different stories, which draws away from the main story.
Well, so I think you supported my statement that you're in agreement with my statement that it supports the main story.
The main story's message.
And that's
but not
what you
the
kept
story
repeating
itself.
here, right? But what you wanted to debate is that they don't support the main character. And you're right; they're not related. They don't share relationship throughout the movie. It's a bunch of individual, semi-segmented stories, right? Because like the Islamic girl has her story, the pastor has his story, the reporter has her story, but they're all actually different versions of basically the main story.
But they're not all asking, is God, whether or not God is dead. The boy has to ask that in order to answer for the class. The Islamic girl, she doesn't really have to ask. I mean, she already believes in it, and her fate has gotten her hit twice by her father and tossed out of her house.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese boy does have to question it, because as far as he knows, there's nothing to it. That, there is no God,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's just creeping into his life. The reporter girl, for the most part, has just been denying of it until she's on death's row. The businessman has forsaken it since his mother got dementia and is likely only questioning it at the end of the film when she has her moment of clarity. The girlfriend, the professor, always knew about it, so
Mm-hmm.
she's not asking whether or not God's dead. The professor, he hates God, so he doesn't admit he's not dead, but he firmly wants to believe he is.
Mm. So I think I'd lump those into two categories. So again, you're right. I agree with you. They don't support the main character, right? Because they're not. Well, the professor and Josh, they're the main characters, right? But then when you have that split, Josh is pretty much independent. There's nobody associated with him. Professor has his girlfriend, all right, that's a side story, and then the girlfriend and her brother, the brother of the girlfriend, is a side story, and then the girlfriend's brother, and his girlfriend, the reporter, right, like that. So Josh is an independent, standalone story. Martin, the Chinese, is an independent standalone. The Asian girl is an independent standalone.
No, she's not Asian. She's Middle Eastern.
Or Mid-Eastern. And then the pastor. Okay, so it is segmented and somewhat disconnected, right? But there's two categories. I mean, so Josh, the professor's girlfriend, and the Middle Eastern girl, they're all put.
The pastor.
They're all put in. Well, not the pastor, but these three. They're all put in a position that they have to stand up for their faith, right? Do they stand up for Jesus Christ, or do they, hide it and say, okay, well, what, I'll keep the peace or whatever. The Martin, the Asian student, comes to faith, right? He's in a difficult position because he knew Christians, and he tried to talk to his father about it, but his father shut him down. It's like, no, 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 we don't talk about that because, you know,
He's in China.
yeah.
It's a very dangerous place.
But he was willing to risk it, and he accepted Jesus Christ. The pastor, it's a little bit different, you know. I think his role, I think they just developed his character through the movie because of the very ending, right? To bring, you know, to give, you know, ask that professor to give his testimony. So, yeah, but I think it was well done. The pastor's story, I think it was well done.
The bits that focused on him, yeah, but again, if it was his story, I wouldn't have any complaints, but it wasn't his story. It was his story, it was her story, it was this other guy's story, this other guy's story.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how the professor has a girlfriend who has a brother who also had a girlfriend. You know, so the reporter lady, she's two people detached from the main plot because her only connection to it is through her boyfriend, through the sister. And then the boyfriend is one detached from the main plot because his only connection is to his sister. But those two characters don't know about the plot, don't interfere with the plot, and are therefore don't have any impact on the plot. If their stories were cut, it would still be the exact same story of the professor debating with his student about the merits of whether or not God is real.
Mm-hmm.
If you cut out the Islamic girl alongside, nothing else would change except at the very end where they may have been trying to use her to say, oh, these characters would get together because they have the same belief.
Mm-hmm.
But again, she doesn't interact, she doesn't support, she doesn't do anything to the main plot, so her story can also be cut out for the most part. So already we removed 3 characters that don't have any direct relation or interaction with the plot. So that just makes it dead weight and possibly only there so the film has a theatrical running length.
Well, I agree they could be cut out and with that very little to no damage done to the main plot, right? I would disagree with the comment about dead weight because I think, again, that they do add supporting content to the main plot, right? Having to stand up for their faith. And that's kind of what the movie's about.
But that's only for the message. It doesn't have anything to do with the plot itself.
That is the plot. Standing up for your faith.
The plot of the story is the boy standing up for his faith. It's not various people.
Mm-hmm.
If it wanted various people, the film should have been an anthology.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, maybe. Probably right there. But I think it flowed for the most part, so I don't have an issue with it.
Except it didn't really flow because whenever we had to interact with one of these characters that weren't directly related to the story, it put the main story on pause.
Mm-hmm.
It just set it aside so we could look at these characters before we then set them aside to once again focus on the main plot. And what's more, we're more or less supposed to feel for some of these characters despite how little interaction we're given or what we're shown of them.
Yeah.
Like the reporter lady. So the first time we meet her, she's having a rough day. Her alarm clock didn't go off at the correct time. She's having to rush out the door. Her car was broken into and she lost her GPS. She doesn't know the location of her surprise interview. So she has to contact her boyfriend. And from there we see that her boyfriend is primarily business, even relationship, because he doesn't want to give her directions to her surprise interview until she tells him she's moving up in the world and can accept advertisements on her blog site. And we're supposed to feel bad for her after she surprises Willie of Duck Dynasty fame, accusing him of murdering and
Yeah, that was just a premise to try to agitate him. But the real thing was preying on his show and spewing Christianity.
right. And she wanted to vilify him for that. She wanted to vilify him for killing and, as she put it, maiming animals.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He said, "Hey, I don't maim animals. Anything I shoot, I kill. Anything I kill, I eat." So he's not doing anything wrong.
Right. But the point is that this is our introduction to this character, who finds people that have a good public persona, and she wants to expose them for what they're keeping secret, essentially. But, this just shows the inherent flaws within her, that she assumes that just because someone is nice on the outside, there has to be something evil within. And I can't like a character like that. They're typically, the antagonists in stories.
Right, and she is an antagonist.
Yeah, and they want to have us feel sympathy with her when she gets cancer and how her entire life is going downhill, but...
Well, she's contrasted with her boyfriend, right? They're both very successful and somewhat powerful, right?
Yeah.
The boyfriend, his life is perfect, like he explains to his mother in that one scene. He's got it all. He's upwardly mobile. He's just made partner. He's connected. He's well known. He's got power. He's got everything you could want. The girl, she's got connections. She's popular, and she's going strong. She's got people texting her and calling her. So she's got fame, right? The difference is the carpet's pulled out from underneath her when she gets cancer. And I don't think it's so much that we're supposed to feel sorry for her. That's just human nature. I don't think that was introduced to say, "Oh, hey, let's pity this character." I think it was introduced to say, "Okay, here's a character who powerful, everything's going their way, but now they're faced with losing it all, and what does it mean?" And so now she's got terminal cancer. She presents that to her boyfriend, and her boyfriend immediately severs the relationship.
She doesn't present terminal. She presents cancer.
Right? Which is an inconvenience. And because she's not perfect, right, the boyfriend terminates the relationship. Says, "Yep, sorry. It's, this does not benefit me. As a matter of fact, it's going to be a detriment to me. I'll not have anything to do with it." Right? And the girl, throughout the movie, she's still, even after having the cancer, they show her going to the concert to,
surprise ambush
to try to ambush. Exactly. Good work. Good choice. Ambush the Christian singers to get them to admit some failing or some using Christianity as to their benefit. That it's not real. But because of her situation, God's able to reach through them to touch her and get her to realize that, I do need Jesus. I need to accept him. So I think that was a good addition to the movie. But it could have been taken out, and it wouldn't have hurt it. So what they did was they made a bunch of different side stories to support the main theme, just not the main characters.
Right.
Which is maybe not it's not normal, it's not common.
But like I said, I think it would work in an anthology film. But with this, they very clearly had a main arc.
What's an anthology film that you can?
It's a culmination of.
So can you mention an anthology film that you consider to be good?
I don't believe I've ever seen an anthology film.
Oh, okay.
I know of the concept. It's like a culmination of various stories.
So I think, again, to me, I don't think you presented an argument that would sway my opinion that this wasn't a good movie. It had some things that detracted from the main story, maybe. But I think it was all in all a good film. I liked it. I liked the message. I liked, how it I was able to follow each character, each side story. Um, there's only a few scenes that I felt didn't belong. They kind of rushed or made a big jump from one part to another. Um,
which unfortunately they had to do because they couldn't give these side stories as much time as they could, because that would further take away from the main story.
mm-hmm, yeah. Well, for example, when the scene where the reporter goes to the Christian singers, and she's there to attack them, and the drummer says, "You're not really here to do this, are you? You're looking for answers." And she says, "How did you know that?" And all of a sudden, her guard is dropped, the anger is gone, the viciousness just dissipates. So it's a big jump. It's a big jump. But it tells you, and his response is, supporting of the main theme. He says, "Well, I felt God wanted, God spoke to me and revealed this to me, right?" Which is how He works, right?
Yeah.
He'll bring people into our path in different situations and reveal things to them that we need to hear or see.
Yeah.
So, yeah. My verdict: good movie.
Well, I don't think we should cast our verdicts just yet, because we've talked about pretty much everything of the film except one major aspect.
And what is that?
The main story arc of the film, the debate itself.
Uh-huh.
We haven't really touched on it at all. We've just gone through all the various side characters.
Right, which I thought was why you thought it was not a good film.
Yeah, they are. But I do want to talk about the main overarching plot,
Uh-huh.
because if it was bad, then the entire film, flat out, wouldn't be good.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, I believe the debate with the student and the professor was good. It was honestly one of the most surprising things to me about the film, that they actually did present legitimate arguments for and against a divine creator, and they were able to counter each other's points, and they were able to do it in a manner that wasn't God is real because God is real, or God is dead because God is dead.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I thought the arguments offered by Josh were very well done. They weren't exaggerated, like some of the dialogue throughout the movie seemed a little exaggerated, right? I thought they were very presented in a very sensitive manner, a very logical manner, and even the Jeffrey during the presentations in the class, the Professor Jeffrey, I think that was his best role, right? His best portrayal. Outside of the classroom, I thought his reactions and dialogue were a little exaggerated. They're a little over the top, a little, because he's very egotistical, very full of himself, and he portrayed that, but over the top, right?
Right.
But in the classroom, I agree. I thought the presentation there was, and it wasn't in your face, right? Which you would kind of think maybe for a Christian film that's trying to get across a message about you need to believe in God. They didn't do that. It was, kind of gentle, succinct, and, here's a logical flow.
Yes. Although my one and only problem with the main arc is the fact that the professor does die at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, for me, it undercuts his redemption arc. You have a man who was angry at God specifically because God took away his mother and didn't give her back, like he prayed and begged for him throughout the entire thing, so he decided he would turn against God and turn others away from God. But when he's finally presented with the fact that he does believe in God, when he's finally, defeated and brought back down to earth, does he look over what he's actually done? He reads his letter from his mother and decides to once again pick up the mantle of Christianity, and his first step to doing this is going to his girlfriend, whom he does love, and apologizing to her. he wanted to make himself a better person when he was brought low.
Well, we don't know that. The only thing we do know is that, he was starting to think again, right? We don't know if he was going to have if that scene in his office where he read the letter from his mother, we definitely know that it affected him, and it drove him to reach out to his girlfriend, to reconnect with her, and maybe if he hadn't have died, it would have been a slow transition, right, if at all. I think the ending was by him dying and having the opportunity at it with his last breath, his dying breath, to accept Jesus as his Lord and Savior. I think that was poignant, right? More poignant than if there had been a transition, like meeting up with his girlfriend, saying, "You know what? Yeah, I you're right. I need to repent, and I need to get back. So let's talk about this, right?" That wouldn't have had the same impact as, here I am on my deathbed. Okay, you know what? I accept Jesus. You're right. It was, I let go of all my anger, right? So I thought it was good. It was sad, right?
Yeah.
But I thought it was good. So.
Well, there you have it. I still, at the end of this argument, take the stance that the film God's Not Dead is bad.
Good. And as do I, so that's 2 votes for good.
As I said before, I take the stance that God's Not Dead is bad.
And I, Papa250, father of Exosuit, say the movie was good based on its own merits.
And with that, please make your own decisions if you would like, and have a good day.